All right. Like I mentioned earlier, like here you use Q to CS, and I don't want you to do this because your idea is to blow up the cannon wave. So this is like a wave management thing where it's like you need to be thinking about which wave you're going to blow up and then blow it up ASAP. So in this case, I really want you to, you could even pick up the ball and then walk here and Q the whole wave, or you can just Q the backline here. But I want you to start queuing the backline ASAP and not use any other spells because like I mentioned, right, you saw it with Chovy as well. He only used W when when the wave was already dead. He was holding W the entire time because he wants to make sure he uses this spell as often as possible because this is the spell that's going to deal the most damage to the whole wave.
Gotcha.
So when you're low on resources, think about that. Either way, we got the wave crashed. We got a base TP off. Very good. Catch the wave. We slow push it back. Very good. Again, you want me to go over this, like the difference between freezing and slow pushing, or are you aware of it? Just gonna ask.
So here's where I start screwing up my entire games. Is like I do concepts without fully understanding them. I do them because I've seen it and I know that it's good to do. But I can't explain why or what I'm doing.
Okay. So I'm gonna explain it quickly for you. Basically, if you have I'm going to draw lines here, okay? I know my drawing isn't too good, and mid lane is a bit different from top lane, but I would say this is the neutral, right? This is neutral.
Yep.
I like imagine like more of a straight line, thank you. Either way, this is a straight, like this is neutral, so this is when the wave comes in neutral. This is on your side, and this is like, closer to your side. I don't really have a term for it, but I would say these are the three spaces you should consider, because basically, in order to freeze in this space, you would need plus 3 or 4, right? So I would say plus 4 is always going to work. You need plus 4 creeps to freeze in this place. You need plus 2 or 3 to freeze in this space, hard freeze. And then basically anywhere here is obviously like, yeah, that's his space, right? But the point is the closer your wave is to the tower, right, the more minions you're going to need to freeze, because these minions are going to arrive earlier. And when this minion wave arrives earlier, that means they're going to start dealing damage to the minions that are here earlier, right?
Yep.
So, the difference between slow pushing a wave and freezing a wave, a hard freeze would require you, if you're freezing it like here, right? Let's say, so you're freezing it in this space, right? So we have our two spaces here. This is space number 1, this is space number 2. If you want a hard freeze in space number 2, you're going to have to keep about 3 to 4 creeps alive, right? To hard freeze it. And hard freeze, the difference between a freeze and a hard freeze, for me, a hard freeze, it will never unfreeze. You will permanently freeze the situation for the rest of the game. As long as you keep 4 more creeps of theirs alive than yours, this will be a freeze. The reason why I'm giving you 2 different spaces is because dragging these creeps, right? To drag these creeps into space number 1, what do you have to do?
I'd have to move up into their space.
You'd have to almost play here, and then you're vulnerable. Yep. Which means I'm making this distinguishment so you can think about when can I freeze with 2 to 3 creeps and walk into their space, or when I cannot walk into this space. You can even freeze them here. Literally. You could stand here and you're very safe and you can still freeze, but you need plus 3 or 4, okay? I will say it's not exactly, like, whether it's 3 or 4 also depends on levels in the game, etc. So I'm not going to go into that too much, because it's like, basically if you have 4, you're always going to freeze here. Always. In this space. Always. If sometimes it's going to be freeze with 3 if you're behind in experience in the team. So if you didn't know, the levels of everyone in the game define creep strength. So if the enemy team is up in levels globally, so if you take all 5 champions and add up their levels and then compare that to all 5 champions of your team and add up their levels, that will define how strong the creeps are. There's also something about towers being dead that influences it, but I don't know how that works, so I'm not going to explain it. Actually, I have no idea. I've always just done the trick where I just look at the experience in the game, and that has worked wonders for me to freeze waves. Plus, like I said, I just freeze in this space, so usually I just do plus 4 and a hard freeze. Now, a slow push basically means that eventually your wave is going to bounce, right? So in other words, a slow push rather than a freeze is eventually, because you've only got 2 creeps alive here, eventually your creeps arriving earlier is going to lead into a situation where as soon as they come from the Nexus over and over again, so about 2 or 3 waves from now, you're going to have a bigger wave than they are.
Yeah, I'll have a stacked wave.
Basically.
Yeah.
You will have a stacked wave. And that is when, again, because you're freezing in this space, which is actually really close to your tower, the first risk that can happen from freezing here is that one of these melee creeps will just waddle into tower range, and then your freeze will get broken even quicker, or your slow push will stack faster, and you may not get a 3-wave stack, or you might only get a 2-wave stack. But it's fine to do this, just keep in mind what the difference is, right? So you notice how all these creeps, they're already hitting a creep, right? All of them, literally.
Yep.
These creeps haven't even started yet. That's the difference, right? That is why you need more creeps here of the red team than of the blue team. And that is the difference between pushing and freezing. And the amount of creeps will determine how fast the wave bounces back.
Yeah.
Again, if you have 4 or more, it will freeze permanently. If you do not have 4 or more, it will bounce back eventually, and the speed at which it bounces back and the amount of creeps that you will have that survive the onslaught that is the creep war, it will all depend on where you draw. Also, how high of a CS you CS at, right? Because if you're hitting a creep at this health, right?
Yeah.
Just to get really nitpicky, right? If you're CSing a creep at this HP, right? How many minion autos is this?
Do
you know?
If it's a melee, I think it's 2 or 3.
Two range creeps. Let's say it's 2 range creep attacks. So in other words, 1 melee plus 1 range creep attack. Right? If it's 3 range creep attacks, then you can wait for 3 range creep. That's why sometimes you'll notice the best players in the world actually not CS a creep quite yet.
They'll wait.
They'll wait until it's absolutely last HP, like 1 minion auto attack from dying, and then they last hit. Because your auto attacks do not equal minion auto attacks. So just something to, keep in mind, think about. If you're freezing a wave, try to last hit at the very last second possible. See? Like there, you CS at the very last second, you missed it, but that's the idea if you're freezing, right? Just to show you, again, something to think about. Again, you can freeze with 3 depending on minion wave experience, and also it depends on where you freeze it in the lane. And you could have 4 creeps and freeze in front of your tower, and half your wave could walk into the tower, and it's no longer a freeze either.